What is up, guys, and welcome back once again then to the Kerbal Space Program career mode for Ebby Space Agency here on the channel. We're back for episode number 9 then, fresh off the back of a fairly successful episode last time out, where we finally managed to put something down on the surface of another planet. We sent a few probes over to Eve, where after a couple of mishaps with the dangers of entering Eve's atmosphere, we did eventually manage to float on nice and safely down to the surface of the purple planet to see just exactly what makes it quite so purple, and to see if it could, in fact, be a different color, which, yeah, spoiler alert if you haven't watched it already, thanks to the mods we've got installed, it in fact can. You join us, though, however, as we head back now to the Kerbal Space Center to continue on our journey. And, yeah, you see there, we, when we were loading, I included the actual live footage from that stream. We had a bit of a mod issue. There was something wrong. We end up losing our space telescope that we put up a couple of episodes ago. Which is a huge shame, because that was a massive boon to our science gathering efforts. So yeah, unfortunately we had to, yeah, we're going to have to send that back up again. But you see there, we do unlock a few more nodes in the science tree, so it wasn't quite in vain, and we do unlock a couple of experiment packs as well there, which are going to be helpful in helping us recoup that lost science. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure why that happened, but hey, you know, we overcome it, and we move on. So, speaking of moving on, this is the next thing we're going to be doing. We are now designing ourselves with a ComSat network. We realized that, you know, the network, the relay that we built a couple of episodes ago, I think it was episode 6, we used hopelessly underpowered comms network equipment for that, and yeah, we're gonna have to try and update our abilities here to be able to start working at greater length from Kerbin, especially with Duna. Obviously, the planet we've got our next eye on, we need to make sure that we've got some sort of network so that we're not having to constantly sort of go out of view of Kerbin. So you see us here then, just redesigning the launcher for these satellites. We used pretty much the same launcher base, I think, for the previous network, but obviously updated it with the new and improved ComSats, 3 of them, with the idea that we then build a network around Kerbin for the 4th. But that is it pretty much designed now, so I'm going to take you over to Past Me once again to see how the launch went. SAS on. And let's go. Helps if I turn the engine up, doesn't it, really? Okay, I mean, it behaves quite well. I mean, I've not tried to pitch this thing over yet. Be a bit unwieldy, but should do its thing. And then... Don't hit me! Don't hit me! Okay, we're good. Okay, right, yeah. This thing's still, we figured this would be the case. Right. Where is my engineer, please? Where are you? I need the gimbaling, and back over we go. Thank you. So yeah, mildly inauspicious start to the career of this ComSat network. The launch, I still don't, like, watching the footage back, I think maybe it was a bit too top heavy, or that fairing was a little bit too long, so aerodynamically it just wasn't sound. But yeah, we do a little bit of a flip, get some style points on ascent for this thing, but we do luckily make it into orbit. Thankfully, I do kind of over-design my launcher stages, so I had a huge surplus of Delta V to be able to throw this thing into orbit, even after losing most of its speed, thanks to that mishap. But you see there, the rest of the flight kind of goes off without a hitch. We fly by the Mun ever so quickly when we're setting it up to go into interplanetary space, and yeah, we get ourselves set up much the same as what we did for the previous attempt. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. It is covered in episode 6. But yeah, you see us there, just kind of floating around, waiting for it to happen. But we do go back now to the launch pad for another launch. Orbit, shall we? I'm going to wait quite a long time into this. I'm probably going to go up to about 15,000, maybe even 20,000 before I start pitching this over, because I remember this thing is quite difficult to control in the lower atmosphere. Alright, let's drop these boosters. And we're going to start the pitch over in just a second. So yeah, the eagle-eyed amongst you might be able to see that we've named this the Atmo Lander Pack, and those with great memory among you as well may also recognize the kind of profile and design of this this rocket, and it is pretty much exactly a copy of the Eve Atmo Lander Pack. However, we are pointing it at a different target. Remember, we did mention at the end of last episode, and a little bit earlier on in here, that we are going to be aiming for the red planet of Duna, and you see us setting up our maneuver node. Before we then decide that we're, going to figure out where we're going to send those probes, we put it on a polar orbit so we can maximize the chances of landing in different biomes, much like we did in Eve on the previous mission. But you see, we cut now back to the ComSat launcher as it drops off its first relay sat in that orbit. You see in the top left there, plenty of signal at that altitude. So hopefully, this comm network works just a little bit better than the previous one that we designed. We hit the brakes so that we equal Kerbin's orbital period around Kerbal, and we set ourselves up with another Kerbal alarm clock. Before then jumping back over to the Duna probes as they make their final approach. We do kind of run a little bit low on signal, but thankfully we maintain control of the ship as we do make our final approach. And here we are arriving at Duna then, around the planet. Looks great with the volumetric clouds, the dust clouds and things like that. So I'm looking forward very much to getting down on the surface and experiencing that right in sort of I want to say first person, but I guess first Kerbal perspective, where eventually the long-term aim is to put boots on Duna, and this is the first stage in realizing that dream. As you see, we circularize here because we've got it in a polar orbit, and we got it angled in such a way that we always have eyes on to Kerbin. We don't necessarily need to worry about having a higher orbit like we did with Eve. And from there then, obviously, once we've detached our first probe, we set it on a nice descent profile there. Thankfully, Duna's atmosphere is so thin that not only do we have to we don't have to worry about any entry heating. We don't actually get any visible entry heating at all. So yeah, nice and sort of easy, sedate descent here for the probes, compared to what we had last episode with the Eve launchers. And you see there, honestly, the heat shield is almost felt a little bit redundant for this, and yeah, we detach it as a result on the descent. I'd say the bigger problem we faced here was obviously that the parachutes weren't as effective, so we do hit the ground a little bit harder than probably what we did at Eve, but still within normal limits to you know, survive the landing. As you see there, we do bounce. I'm assuming we put we made a rubber top on the probe just to cover off and you know, give it some style points again, both on takeoff and landing, before we then start reaping in that sweet science rewards for our efforts. And then, yeah, the other two launchers pretty much go exactly the same. Nothing really too crazy to report on these. Yeah, we do manage to sort of put ourselves down in different biomes each time, so you know that satisfies the 3 biome requirement for the Duna probes strategy that we accepted. We leave the heat shield on this one, I think mainly just to try and provide a bit of cushioning. We did get a little bit close to that 7.5 meter per second tolerance on the previous one, so if something was to sort of blow up on landing for landing a bit too hard, I'd rather it be the heat shield than you know, the probe core or any of the batteries or anything like that. So yeah, and then finally, yeah, like I said, both of the other launchers went well. This is the final one here, just setting down again, pretty much exactly the same. There's no massive variation in terrain or biome, but yeah, you see that is exactly why we kept the heat shield on. The heat shield took the brunt of that impact, and thankfully leaves the rest of the probe intact for us to start gathering the science. But for that is the Duna probes mission successfully completed, and we can look ahead to the future to try and aim eventually to put, you know, boots on the ground and you know, a flag on Duna. As a result, we use the science gathered from those probes to unlock some new tech, which we then start looking at putting towards a dedicated Duna transfer ship, which is what you see us designing at the moment. So the idea being here that we're not just going to launch a lander with enough life support and hope for the best and leave everyone nice and cramped inside. We are going to design something with a little bit of living space for our Kerbinauts that are going to be spending, you know, a year, 2 years plus in space. And obviously, with the size being what it is and our tech level being what it is, we can't necessarily just build that in one launch and send it up. So we are building this in orbit, and this is the crew module that you see us designing here now. So it's got a nice little lab, it's got a control center and all that good stuff. I think this is the 1.8 meter parts. It could be the 1.25, but it's kind of small. It's not necessarily the sort of amount of space we'd like to give, but unfortunately we are limited by our tech level and what we realistically can put in orbit. But you see there's there, putting the final docking port on, and that is the crew module for our long-term goal, our Duna mission. Already we've got the lander up in orbit, so this will eventually go up and meet that, as well as the actual drivetrain stage. But that is going to stay in storage for the moment, for the time being, until we design that, and we're in a position to get it all into orbit. So we dive instead ahead over to the spaceplane hangar, and we're going to go ahead and start designing ourselves a little rover, just something that we can send on future manned missions to various bodies. And you know, try and gather ourselves a bit more science. You know, you see there we've got the rover arm on, so we can maybe start examining some of the terrain features that we're finding. We've got a new seismometer that we unlocked recently on there as well, and then the old faithful, you know, the goo, the barometer, the thermometer there, and magnetometer, I think, as well as some repair parts, and you know, just a few spares, as well as you know, some surface science and things like that, before we then find a way of trying to fit it into a service bay. It is very, very cramped in here, and that's going to become quite apparent later on when we try and utilize this for the first time. I won't spoil anything, but it does lead to some entertaining quirks of the design, shall we say. But you see there, we are just trying to move around and just find some way in which we can fit this into a standard 2.5 meter service bay, so that we can attach it to our sort of normal caliber of lander craft. And eventually we do manage to get that done, and sort of nice and compact. And you see there we now go over to the vehicle assembly building just to try and put that together into some form of launch platform. You see, we're finishing the design here. We realized a bit late in the day that we didn't have any way of generating power, because we wanted some lights on there, especially if we're going to be operating this at night. And I don't think this is necessarily the final design of the rover, but it's definitely it's definitely the first sort of iteration that we're going to attempt to use. And the first place we are going to try and take it is going to be Minmus. So you see, we've got the service bay nice and packed together there, and we're just going to build the rest of the lander around it. The concept being here that we don't necessarily need to have the science experiments attached to the lander, with the exception of obviously the Science Junior. It's a little bit too big to put on a rover, let's be real. But then, we can land this, send the rover out, put the Kerbals on the rover, and do the science there. And potentially, do it on multiple biomes. But you see, we do have the surface science packs unlocked as well. And as a result, we are going to start loading those into a cargo storage unit for the express purpose of taking those down to the minty-colored moon surface, just to try and again reap more science and pull as much data as we can. You see, we put a little probe core on there as well, so that we can control the rover remotely if we need to. And then we'll just build the rest of the rocket there, just the transfer stage, and then a launcher stage, which is nice and easy. It's standard stuff, nothing exciting with the launcher. The weight's not really too dissimilar from previous missions that we've launched. Speaking of launchers, though, I'm going to hand you once again back over to Pass Me to see how the launch of this went. Go. Cool, so nice and easy on this time. No spectacular aerobatics from from the rocket, which is very good because we do have crew on board here. An all-female crew this time. We've got Valentina, Cloudtop, and Cedron Kerman, in the crew module. And again, we just set ourselves up with a nice routine. It's routine at this point. A nice routine transfer over to Minmus. And these girls are off to the surface of the Minty Moon. I think this is their first trip. I could be wrong. I know I think it was Cloudtop and Cedron went to the Mun last episode. I'm not sure if they've been to Minmus yet. However, obviously that's going to change. I think Valentina's already been. This is going to be fairly obvious. Standard for her. And then we do in fact aim for a sort of a polar orbit, because one of the areas we've not hit yet are Minmus's poles, which we see we are now descending towards to try and get that ticked off. We leave the fuel can detachment a little bit late there, as you see. It doesn't quite have enough velocity on it to destroy it on impact, and in fact it does kind of just plink off into the distance there as we do touch down. So we're quite lucky we did miss it. It could have very easily bounced back up and knocked into the craft and made our day that much more difficult. But you see, this is this is the quirk of the rover being so compact that I was talking about. For whatever reason, Kerbal Physics decided to have a bit of fun with me, and the engines are completely off. But for whatever reason, it just decided to try and launch the rocket itself. And for the life of me, I tried to tip this thing over and I couldn't. So I had to do this just absolute meme of an exit strategy for the rover, which was just to spin the rocket round as harsh as we could, and just to yeet this thing into the distance. You see, we broke a little bit of the rover there as we ejected it from the craft. Thankfully, the craft itself is unharmed, but it does come to a stop a fair distance away, actually. So we send Valentina off to go and investigate the rover and see what the state of it is. She decides to use her face to try and turn it over, and ends up actually sending it even further away. I don't know what her face is made of, but she unfortunately had launched it a bit further. She eventually does get it turned over. I realize a bit too late, because we're already on Minmus, that we didn't put any sort of reaction wheels in this thing. And normally that probably wouldn't be an issue on somewhere like the Mun, but here on Minmus with microgravity, it is a real problem. And unfortunately, it basically makes this rover less than useless. So we had to kind of fly over, grab the experiments manually. We sent Cedrin over to repair the arm to see if there's anything we could potentially do before. But eventually, we kind of admitted defeat. Valentina got off and flew on over before we decided to set the flag there to commemorate this somewhat successful mission. But there's definitely some lessons identified. We then try and get as much more science as we can from the poles before hopping back into the ship, and we leave Cedrin then to start placing some of these experiments. So Cedrin, as the engineer, we leave her to place the control node, and I think we also get her to place... in fact, no, sorry, we get her to place all of the experiments, but it was Cloudtop is going to set up the communication and the engineers, and I think I've got them mixed up. I think Cloudtop is, in fact, the scientist for the engineer for the mission. Cedrin is the scientist, so apologies to you girls. Don't hate me too much, but they perform their respective roles basically, and place the appropriate equipment down before setting up the control station and letting those sort of do their thing over time. We're going to leave them there. Obviously, they're long-term experiments, so we hop back into the ship and make a fairly uneventful takeoff from Minmus. From here, the return was nice and simple. We set ourselves up on a free return trajectory. We do get, I think, a little bit of a fly past the Mun, but we take the opportunity on ascent to just grab a couple bits of more science before then obviously hopping back in. And yeah, you see there, we do take a quick fly past the Mun, but it doesn't really hold us up or cause any problems. We do take the opportunity to get a magnetometer reading over the Mun, and grab that and stick it in the control module, before then hopping back in and sitting out the rest of the descent. We did wait a little bit before we made the final burn just to see what the Mun was going to do. I wasn't 100% confident that it wouldn't get in the way, but thankfully we do have enough Delta V in to return to Kerbin's atmosphere. And unfortunately we set the re-entry up to happen at night, so we didn't quite capture the most picturesque of views, but we do get a good amount of science, and that's all that matters, right? That's why we're doing this. A bit of experience for our Kerbinauts there, and we go ahead and research some nuclear engines, which are going to come in very handy for when we design our Duna mission drivetrain. But for now, guys, that is the final part of this episode. Hopefully you did enjoy it. I'm looking forward to what comes in the rest of the series. But for now, thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all in the next one. Goodbye.